civil service. So the nature of the Republican Guard itself meant that it could be a trigger for the crisis that unfolded after that. But this incident was not a pure bolt from the sky. You know, if you were a political meteorologist, you know, if you were a political risk manager, you would clearly understand that a crisis was coming to South Sudan. We all know that meteorologists will tell us it is going to rain tomorrow, you know, based on the direction of weather and direction of wind and what have you. The same thing, likewise, in politics. A political analyst or a political risk manager will tell you that there is a political crisis coming because of ABCD. So this bubble that burst on the 15th of December built up for a very long time. So our President Salva Kiir, would have not been surprised. Majority of the SPLM leaders could have not been surprised. They knew this crisis was building up. And not only that, from the kind of things that took place within the Republican Guard unit, and this we argued in the court, our president would have not been surprised that there was going to be such a flare-up. You could be surprised about the dynamics of the conflict and the consequences that it has now generated. But the genesis of it, I would argue that we could have not been surprised. The government deployed a lot of resources, propaganda, all the South Sudan television, airtime, and radio airwaves are directed mainly to promote this storyline that there was a coup. The whole world has discredited that. You go right from the incident. The European Union, the African Union, the United States of America, the United Nations mission in South Sudan, they all came out very clearly saying that there was no an attempted coup, but what actually happened, there was a mutiny within the ranks of the military in Al-Qiyada Barracks. And that is very clear, because if there was a coup, which coup does not target the palace? Because whom are you trying to topple? Whom are you trying to overthrow? It's the president, and the president resides in the palace. So this so-called coup plotters do not move any unit to go and attack the palace. Radio and television were not attacked. Some of the critical infrastructures, including the airport, some of the critical road junctions in the city the roundabouts were not controlled. Even Juba Bridge was not controlled. The ministers, whose government was purportedly being overthrown, were in their houses without any protection. If the idea was to overthrow the government, you cannot leave the Minister of Defense, the Minister for Interior, the Minister for National Security, and some of the senior officers, without taking an action against them. And more so, even the people who were later arrested were picked up in their residences. The simple logic would be that these people, if they had planned a coup, they would have either taken part in the military confrontations itself, or there could have been a plan to evacuate them, because if the idea is to move against the government, you don't leave your leaders exposed. You could have put in place a plan to evacuate them if the plan failed. So look at all those facts, and you will reach the conclusion that there was a coup. There was no coup. There was no coup, and there was no coup. But there was a mutiny. And this we told the government lawyers, the prosecution lawyers in Juba. We said, gentlemen, do not waste your time with theory. Mutiny as well. If you want to kill us, if the idea is to execute us, mutiny, abetting in mutiny, leads to the same outcome. So concentrate your case on mutiny and prove it that we were part of it. And if the idea is to sentence us to death, you will arrive at the same outcome. You don't need to waste your time about this cool thing when you cannot prove it. And when mutiny, according to our law, according to criminal law, if you incite soldiers to rebel against the government and shoot their colleagues, you will receive a maximum penalty. You will receive a death sentence. Much as if you instigate them to stage a coup d'etat. So the idea of the coup theory and why the government was really steeped in trying to promote this narrative was simply for political purposes, to win some sympathy, That African Union does not allow anybody to take power by force, and the international community. It was more of some kind of political repackaging of events. But what actually happened is what I have said. Well, they will not give it up. They know that it is discredited. Even Museveni, who came with troops and supported the government, came out very clearly, and many of you might have read what he said, that there was no coup. So nobody outside the powers that be in Juba who talk about that there was a coup on the 15th of December 2013. But what can you do? They are entrapped in that mindset. You may call it a kind of cognitive bias, confirmation bias for those of you who have studied psychology. We as humans, we have this kind of difficulty. Once we believe in something, what we call make-believe is really a very dangerous, make-believe is a very dangerous kind of human bias, and there is nothing that you can do about it. So, if you want to engage with them intellectually to prove it, they will not. But they believe that there was something like that because they have drilled their minds and tongues just to focus on this story. But let me come back to conflict before I outline what I think is the way forward. I would like to talk briefly about the SPLM from liberation to CPA. Well, when SPLM was formed in 1983 as a political movement, it drew support from all over South Sudan. It was a continuation of the struggle, what you may call unfinished business of the Anyanya movement. So it rose on the ashes of Anyanya. It inherited part of the Anyanya 2 struggle. Right from the inception, SPLM had problems. It is split in 1983, right from the inception. And from 1983, the two factions of SPLM, what became SPLM proper, SPLM, SPLA, and then the Anyanya 2, who broke away right from the inception, were locked up in bloody war in eastern Upper Nile. Many people died there. In Nasir, in Gajak area, in Lormer, Tekikifanga. SPLA recruits coming from Balkazar were intercepted, were killed. SPLA recruits coming from Bor and Equatoria, from Bailiet area, from Shulk area, all suffered because of these divisions. It was a very difficult time. What started as political differences quickly degenerated into an ethnic conflict, pitting the Dinka and the Nuer. And that time, up to 1988, many people died, many homes were destroyed, and gross violations of human rights were witnessed. In Equatoria, because the SPLM just came after South Sudan. Actually, while South Sudan was being divided into 3 regions, there were apprehensions. And so when the SPLA came to Equatoria, it was met with resistance in Mondare areas, in Capoeira. It was also met with resistance. And further west, when the SPLA went to Bahar Ghazal, it was met with resistance in western Bahar Ghazal because of these apprehensions of SPLA being seen as predominantly Dinka and advancing Dinka agenda. In 1988, we had a breakthrough. The SPLA and the Anyanya 2 managed to patch up their differences, and we had a unity of the SPLM movement. This unity did not survive the storms of 1991, what people call, the end from 1989 to early 1991 to the collapse of the Soviet Union and what have you. Many people reached conclusions, many academics and many political scientists reached the conclusion that this was the end of history. And then Francis Fukuyama is famous with that. There is a book called The End of History. So it's more or less PLM was affected by